Kelly. Amen. Give him a hand as he comes.
Come on and bless the Lord with us real quick. Hallelujah. Come on, bless the Lord with us real quick. I want you to stand with me for a second, as is what we made customary here at the church. Just go to somebody and hug them real quick and say, the past is over. It's time to walk in your future. The past is over. It is time to walk in your future. Hallelujah. Time to walk in your future.
Two in the morning, gently rest upon my heart. Like the dew in the morning, gently rest upon my heart. Rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, like the dew in the morning. Rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, rest, like the dew in the morning, gently rest upon my heart. Hallelujah. Like the dew in the morning, gently rest upon my heart. Rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, like the dew in the morning. Rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, rest, Jesus, rest.
Hallelujah. One more time. Come on, just put your hands together and just bless the Lord right quick. Hallelujah. For the Lord is good. For the Lord has brought us together once again to come to discover a little bit more about Him, and not only about Him, but about ourselves. Because when we discover things about ourselves, good things according to the righteousness of God, then we can truly walk in a victorious style life. Amen. By holding on to our former selves, we're giving energy to the enemy to remain a major influence in our lives. And anytime you give the energy to the enemy to remain an influence in your life, you are setting yourselves up for defeat. You're setting yourself up to be in position to where anything that comes against you, you will not have the empowerment to overcome that thing. So we have to learn how to not be disconnected from the God we choose to serve, because those places of disconnection are places where the enemy enters into our lives and puts strongholds in the midst of our circumstances. So I want you to turn with me to 1 Peter chapter 5 right quick. 1 Peter chapter 5. Today's title of this lesson, my wife told me I never titled my lesson. The lesson of the title will be today, Lesson Learned. Somebody say, Lesson Learned.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. Hallelujah. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 8 reads as such: Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. So now this is going to be the principle of our life change. To be sober, to be vigilant, because we understand we have an enemy that tries to influence our lives in a negative way, to where we are not walking according to the purpose of God over our lives. Now that word sober means to have good sense. It's not only about being drunk and getting out of your drunken state, but it's about having good sense, having good judgment and good wisdom, and having a level head in times of stress in your life. How many know that the enemy tries to come in to cause you to have stress in your life and to lose your mind? We've got to learn how to be sober in the midst of these circumstances so that we don't lose our mind when things come against us that cause us a conflict that separates us from the righteousness of God. And we do this by the experiences we've had in our lives, because the experiences we've had in our lives should be giving us the maturity to be able to walk in a sober-minded state so that we're able to reject the mindsets that open us up for the enemy's attack. Because it is within us to reject what the enemy is trying to do against us. And when we are walking in a mature place, when we are walking in a sober place, we know how to say no to the enemy. And a lot of times that's all it takes is a simple no to the enemy, because the enemy is a suggestive predator. That means he will make suggestions to you, and then when you fall into accordance with his suggestion, then he jumps on you and he tries to devour you. That's what happened to Eve in the Garden of Adam and Eve. The enemy made suggestions to her, and it was when she attached herself to the adjustments, she lost all that God had given her in her victory. See, she had already had the victory, but he tricked her out of the victory she already had. And that's what happens to us in the church. We already have the victory, but if we listen to the enemy, he will trick you out of the victorious place you should be walking in. That's why we've got to learn from our past to make us wiser towards our future. You understand? What happens is we should be carrying forth the lesson and not the incident. And I want y'all to hear this real clear. We have to start carrying forth the lesson and not the incident. Because by carrying forth the incident, instead of concentrating on what God is trying to teach us, we stay in a place of mourning over the incident of whatever happened. Let me give you all this simple example right here. I have this pen in my hand. I dropped this pen on the floor. That's the incident. Now, my mind should tell me that if I don't want to have to keep bending down and hurting my back, I'll learn from that incident the lesson, and I'll move forward in the lesson, and I'll stop dropping my pen on the floor. Amen. Now, the incident is the pen on the floor. That incident is dead and gone. I can't change it. I can't adjust it. I can't stop it from happening. It's already happened. But what I can change is the lesson I learned from it and take forward. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what we have to do in our lives. We don't take the incident forward with us, but we take the lesson from the incident learned, take it forward with us so that we don't repeat the same thing over and over again. See, once that happens, that incident is no longer responsive to life. That incident has happened, is dead. It can't be repeated. You can't do it over and over again. That thing is said and done. What the problem is that we keep bringing life to the incident in our minds. So instead of that thing being dead and gone, we carry it forward with us. And by carrying it forward with us, we bring everything that happened around the incident, the emotion of the incident, the anger, the hurt, whatever happened in the incident. Instead of taking the lesson forward, we repeat the incident over and over in our minds and give that thing life. We've got to stop giving life to things that only happen in a moment of our existence. Because by giving it life, we open ourselves to the attack of the enemy, because in that place was a place of mourning. And when you are in a place of misery, you give the enemy the victory in the moment. And we've got to stop mourning dead places to give the enemy life in our lives. See, that's what the enemy does. The enemy attacks the moment, because by attaching himself to the moment, he can become a cancer in our lives. That's why sometimes when you're repeating thoughts in your mind, the thought always expands on the incident. Well, maybe I should have done this differently, or why did they do that? Now you're trying to figure out the mind of the other person that may have caused the incident in your life. But once that incident is done, you cannot allow that incident to control where you're going in your life. The only thing that should really be controlling where you're going is the lesson you've learned from the incident that happens. That's why we have to learn how to learn progressively through the incidents. And what that means is when it happens, you don't stay where it's at, but you take the lesson where you're going. That way you don't repeat the thing over and over again, but you take the lesson, which gives you an accountability to not do what you were doing before. Because when you learn your lesson, the lesson itself manifests the purpose.
Yes, God.
And that's what we have to learn how to do. Learn the lesson so that the purpose can be manifested in our lives. If you keep taking that incident and allowing the happening of that incident to control you, you'll find yourself falling out of the purpose of God, and you'll find yourself entrapped in a place that is bringing you misery and depression and anger, and in times even making you fearful of moving forward in your life because you're afraid you're going to respond to what the incident was in your past. But the incident was a lesson to learn, so that God's thoughts and hopes towards you could be manifested in his complete purpose for your life. See, what lessons should do, and I want you to understand this, lessons are sent to kill who we were so that they can birth us into who God is taking us to be.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
And I can give you this example. Y'all know I'm in school trying to get this LPN thing. Thank God for my wife, but not for her, I'd be failing math. So anyway, I'm in class and, doing this online stuff, which is a struggle to me. But anyway, the point being, when I do finally get to the end of this course and I passed all my courses, and it's time for graduation, and I'm down there at the Civic Center all happy and all that kind of stuff, there's going to become a time when I'm going to make my walk to the stage. Now, when I walk up on this stage, I'm going to be bringing all of the things I've experienced, all of my past titles, truck driver, welder, all that kind of stuff. But when I get to a certain point and they hand me my diploma, I'm going to take on a new title. The new title is going to be LPN. And once I take on that LPN title, all the things of my past have to fall away from me. Now, in the spiritual world, when you walk up to the altar, which is your graduation spot, and you confess, Lord, I want to be saved, I want to follow you, what happens is what you were being called before you enter the altar, once you make that commitment and God accepts your repentance, all those things should fall away from you and die to you, and now you are birthed into the newness of your life. Once you're birthed into the newness of your life, it is upon you not to go back into that old mentality and try to pick up those old things and take them forward into the new title of who you are. I can't go into a nursing home or a hospital acting like a welder, burning people up. You understand what I'm saying? I've got to go in there with a new mentality now. You understand what I'm saying? And you cannot go into your new place of salvation with a sin-filled mentality because you'll burn up the newness of your birth and you'll abort what God has done in your life.
That's good. Amen.
Now I want to give you a simpler example. Amen. Think of Peter walking on the water. Everybody knows the story of Peter walking on the water. When Peter stepped out onto that water, he was birthing a new thing in his life, something he had never experienced before. So what he had to do when he stepped into the water, he was separating himself from an old mindset and stepping into a new mindset. And as long as he walked into that new birth that took place when he stepped on the water, he was able to walk on the water. But it was when he returned to the mindset that he had on the boat, he began to sink. And what happened was, if it was not for the proximity of Jesus, he would have drowned. And that's what's happened to some of you today, that God has given you something new, but because you're still being affected by the things of your past, instead of being able to walk on the water, you get to a certain point and you're beginning to drown in the memories of the incidents of your past. That's why those things must die to you. They must die to you. You embrace the lesson of it, but you don't keep living in the mourning of the memory of the incident that happened. As long as you walk in the new birth, you have access to everything that was birthed through the creativity of God for your life. When he stepped in that water, he should have stayed in the lessons that he had learned from walking with Jesus and seeing all the miracles. All of that stuff should have been part of his birthing process. But what happened was he re-entered into a place of fear, which was part of his old lifestyle and old mentality, and it caused him to miss out on the completeness of the blessing God had for him. You don't want to miss out on the completeness of the blessing God has for you. And the only way that you can truly walk fully in that blessing is to stay in your place of new birth, which means you got to have a complete mind shift. You can't think like you used to think. You can't connect to the things you used to connect. You can't connect to the type of people you used to connect to. Your whole system has to change. And that's where we run into problems with people don't understand the system change of salvation, because they're afraid they might miss something. But don't you realize that most of the things that you were connected to in your past were the things that were keeping you from getting to your future? So you have to learn how to let certain things go. It's just a part of growth. It's a part of maturity. It's a part of becoming who you were created to be, to know when it's time to separate yourself completely from the things of your past and move into a new place. The lesson should always outlive the circumstance. Okay. If your lesson and your past circumstance are on the same level, you are walking in the wrong mentality. I'll say that again because I jumbled it up. But if your lesson, right, and your circumstance are on the same level, you are walking in the wrong mentality. Because your circumstance cannot follow you. Just like that pen fell and that was the end of the story, that circumstance, when it happened, it was done. Let it go. Learn the lesson and move forward. For it's the lesson that gives you the strength to be better than you've ever been before. But if you hold on to the circumstance, you'll stay where that circumstance is, and you will never move forward into who you were created to be. The lesson should have taught Peter, walking on that water, that I'm walking in the midst of all things are possible. Amen. And your life should teach you that I am walking in the midst of a newness of life. Yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I've done stupid things. Yes, I've done some retarded, crazy things that I should have thought twice about. And sometimes I thought twice about it and still did it. Amen. But now I have been reborn into a new mindset. And those old things that I did, I will not repeat, but I'll remember the lesson of them so that I do not have to go through that sorrow again. See, we like to reflect on things, see. And we like to think back on things, how people hurt us and things that were done. And I don't know what's so comforting about thinking about painful places. But there's something in the flesh of a person. And I think it's got something to do with that dopamine effect, that thing that excites us in our mind, that makes us, when we think of old stuff, we have some type of excitement about it. But you've got to learn how to negate that aspect of your thinking, because the more you stay in your past, the longer it's going to take you to reach the place of your future. Jesus. Wow. Stop reflecting on the circumstances. Because the enemy is an opportunist, and he seeks whom he shall devour. He has to seek whom he shall devour, because there should be a people that is stronger in their mindset to when he walks by him, he knows, okay, I can't mess with this person because they learned their lesson. But if every time he walks by you, he sees you in the memory of your past and in a mourning place because of what's happened to you in your past, he knows he can attach to you, because that thing of your past was something he attached to and caused you misery then, so he knows he can go back into the same atmosphere to cause you more misery. And you cannot give him that much access to you. You can't give anybody that much access to you that they're able to dictate where you are in your life or how you leave from where you used to be. You have to take control of your life in a way that you set the standard for where you are and for what's going on in your life. You have to set that standard. No parent can set it for you. No spouse can set it for you. No best friend can set it for you. The preacher can't set it for you. You have to set that standard in your own life. Now, you can be taught certain things from other people, but when it comes down to the decision-making process, I can't make the decision go in your mind. you have to take that upon yourself, the accountability and the responsibility of taking things on that usher in a new mindset for you so that you don't repeat all the things you used to do. And that's what we end up doing. We don't realize because, see, sometimes we might change the person. Sometimes we might change the location. We might change how we do it. But in a sense, we're still doing the same things we used to do, but in a different way, and we're getting the same results, and we think we're changing things, but you're not changing a thing. You're just changing how it looks. And you got to change more than just how it looks. You got to change the whole process. You got to change the whole expectation that you have. You got to change your whole thinking so that you aren't doing the same thing you've been doing all the time. Amen? It may seem a little hard, but truth be told, if you want to fully live in the future, you're going to have to die to your past. You're going to have to die to even the you of your past. That person that you have become. And, you know, some people might have thought that person was cute because you might have played it lightly. You might have made a joke out of it. So people thought you were all right. But all the time, you realized within yourself you weren't really getting anywhere. But it made it all right because it comforted you. But if you truly want to move into the future of who you are, you're going to have to be for real with yourself and admit that some of the decisions you made and some of the actions you took got you in a mess, got your mind messed up, and you cannot allow yourself to repeat those things over and over again. You've got to be strong enough to initiate change. To initiate change. Just think of some of the deeds you've done and maybe regret it. Some of them maybe you've enjoyed it. Just think of some of those things that the flesh was in the moment of what you were doing. Wasn't nothing spiritual. You weren't being wise, but your flesh got satisfaction out of the moment. And that's what draws you back when you lend too much authority to your flesh in your life. And the moment becomes satisfying to you, so you want to repeat that thing over and over again, even though you know it's not good for you. For some people, it might be lust, because we always connect that to lust. Some people might be a kleptomaniac. You might have liked to steal, put a candy bar in your pocket when you're walking out the store or something. I don't know what your thing is. You know, some people are manic depressives. You understand what I'm saying? Because they like people to pity them. You understand what I'm saying? Some people are just have mindsets to where they just are discombobulated all the time, running here, running there. They never stay with one thing. They always start something, never complete anything. These are all mentalities of an old mindset, because when you move forward, you know there must be a soberness in your action. So you have to allow these places to die in your life. All you have to do is look at Lot's wife. The whole city that she was leaving behind was corrupted with sin. And God was about to destroy that whole city. When she walked out of the city and left the grounds of the city, she was being birthed into a new place. She was being birthed into a new promised land. But yet and still, in the midst of her being birthed into a new place, she yearned for something of the old incidents and mindset and caused her to look back. And y'all know what the Bible says to her. When she looked back, she got stuck in a place that she could never remove herself from. And that's what happens to us a lot of times when we keep looking back at the incidents and experiencing the incidents over and over again in our minds. We get stuck in a place that we cannot remove ourselves out of.
True. That's true.
So we become the essence of Lot's wife in the reality of today's times. You've got to stop living those incidents over and over again. Learn from them and move forward. When you're born again, you are a new creature. Behold, all things have become new. So you have walked across the graduation stage of your life. And on the left side, you've left your sinful nature behind. And on the new side, you've taken on the new name of a king or queen of the great I am. So that means that you have accepted a new inheritance for yourself. And in a new inheritance, there must be a new mindset. Because in the old inheritance, there was poverty and pain. And in the new inheritance, there is richness, wealth, and joy. And you cannot receive your riches and wealth and joy in the mentality of poverty, because then you will destroy the wealth of your future. In other words, you can't win $100 million on the lottery and live your life like you're still working from paycheck to paycheck. Amen. There has to be a mind transformation for you to adjust to the new thing so that you don't waste it. And it's the same with your salvation as the same it is with the simplicity of your life. You cannot take your old thinking into a new place that you're trying to go. You'll contaminate it with the old thinking, and you'll end up getting the same response out of life that you've been getting before over and over again. And you'll be mad at yourself, asking yourself why, because you have not taken a realistic look at yourself, realizing that you are the cause of the nature you are taking forward. You've got to consider, what is the cost of my life? Because I can tell you, each one in here, each one of you are priceless. There is no cost that can be placed on your life other than the cost of the blood that was shed so that you could access your life, have it abundantly, and live it in a lifestyle that you are able to walk completely in who you were created to be. Stop wasting time being anything or anyone other than who God truly created you to be.
Amen.
Stop connecting to mediocre acceptance because everybody accepts what they see about you, but in reality, that's not the best of who you are because you have not walked into that person yet. Don't settle for less than the greatness of who you were created to be. If God created you for it, then he created the ability in you to become it.
Yes, God. Oh, that's good.
So stop settling for anything less than what God has created you to be. And if you have people in your life that are accepting you for being sorry, for accepting you for being a butthole, those are the wrong people in your life. You need somebody that's going to stand up with you and tell you, hey, I don't know what's wrong with you, but that ain't right. You a real jerk right now.
Okay.
You need somebody that's going to be real with you, because other people are just feeding you because it helps them to keep you where they are so they themselves don't have to rise to another level. Wow. They're afraid if you get better, you might leave them behind because they have no intention of getting better. So you need to stop accepting people who are willing to accept you lower than the highness that God created for you. And I know that means you might want to cut some people off, but again, then I'll ask you, how much do you value your own life? The one you have. You don't get no redo. You don't get no reboot. This is it. My God. And if you don't do all you can do to become all you were created to be, you have wasted the gift of this life. And it's a daily process. I mean, you're going to keep going and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to do certain things, but that's why we have grace. So that in the midst of our mistakes, we don't get destroyed, but we get opportunity to back up off of that thing, look at it, learn the lesson, and then move beyond it. And that's what this lesson today is about. It's about you learning to move beyond the incident instead of holding on to it and carrying the weight of it and wondering why you're dragging yourself into your future instead of stepping boldly and strongly to receive what God has for you. You are a new creature. Behold, all things are become new, which means all opportunities have become new for you. There's some opportunity. Yo, excuse me, my mouth is so dry. This is the first time Evangelist ain't bring me no water. You slipping back there. Woo. Anyway, all things have become new, which means all of your opportunities are new. There are some opportunities. Thank you so much. There are some opportunities that God just could not release to you in the manic state of mind that you were prior to where you're going now. Because you wouldn't have been able to handle those things because you would have destroyed them in the mentality of your flesh. Don't y'all know that flesh destroys? That's what it does. Flesh brings death to things. We're talking spiritually now. But when you walk in the spirit and don't fulfill the lust of the flesh, that means now you have transformed yourself into life. And you can leave behind the death of the flesh, the death mindset of the flesh, the death actions of the flesh, and you can actually live for a change. Some people think they're living because they have a nice car or whatever.
Amen.
I'm so thirsty.
Drink.
Oh, Jesus. But let me tell you something. You're not living based on things. You're living based on who you're becoming.
My God.
Because any clown can get a halfway decent job, don't jack up your credit, and get a nice car.
My God.
And then that same clown gets suicidal because the car breaks down and he can't afford to get the part he needs for the car. So the question is, how are you living? Are you living according to the lessons you've learned that open the door to greater things for you? Or are you still living in the mentality of a place that was keeping you from the promises of God for your life? I'm going to give you a couple of good pointers here that I want you to take and receive that might help you be able to make partial transition into the new place God is trying to take you. One thing I like about school, I'm learning a whole lot about the brain and all that kind of stuff. And one thing you got to learn to do is retrain your mind to respond from the lessons you've learned. Retrain your mind to respond from the lessons you learned and not the incidents you experienced. Because if you respond from the incidents, your flesh will supersede over what you need to do in the moment. But when you respond in your mind from the lesson, it gives you the ability to fix whatever you're facing. To either break away or build up or whatever you need to do in the midst of that circumstance, you've learned a lesson, so now you know how to address it. Another thing is you don't repeat actions that imitate the incident. The incident will never be the same again. Yeah, hopefully ain't none of y'all did crack or nothing like that before. You know, y'all probably smoke weed or something. But anyway, most of y'all ain't done no crack or nothing like that. So, but the thing about that crack thing is a crackhead is always repeating the same process because he's trying to imitate the initial high he had. He doesn't realize that you can never go back to that initial incident. That is said and done. And everything you experience trying to repeat the things over and over again is just simulating what you've already experienced, but it'll never be that again. So don't repeat that action that imitates the incident. You don't want to repeat that thing over and over again. And when you see yourself meditating on old incidents, stop and pray. I know we tell people to pray all the time, but that is the lifeline to our change. Amen. Because when you pray, you are first of all telling God that you believe in him, right? And then you're telling him that you're trusting in him, that the things even